Good morning, everyone. We're starting this week the portion of Vayakel Pekudei, and we will be discussing a talk from the Rebbe on the portion of Vayakel, a leader's responsibility. We study from selections of Lekutei Sichot, the book of Shmot. Before we begin, I want to share with you an introduction. We read about the actual contribution to the temple, what was brought, what was it used for, and how it was actually constructed. These are the two portions. They are almost a repeat. One is about the accounting, how much silver, how much gold, and then what they did with it. In one verse, we read towards the end about a list of items that were brought. We read about the women who weaved the tapestry and the layers that covered the tabernacle and the goats themselves. In other words, they wanted to do a wall, so to say, blankets or covers. And there is a very unique talent where you can do it while it's on the animal still. So first, it does not absorb impurity, because once you shear the goat or the sheep, it can absorb impurity, and it's not, the quality will never be the same. So there were some very wise women who did it. Right after that, the Torah tells us, "V'anesiim evihu," the leaders of each tribe brought et avnei hashoam, the precious stones for the breastplate, ve'et avnei miluim, and those very big stones, two stones, one here, on top of the shoulders of the high priest, and each one 6 names of the tribes. Ve'et hashemen lama'or, oil for the menorah, which was extremely difficult to achieve, and one more or 2 more items. Now, this concludes the actual bringing, not the commandment to bring, but the actual bringing. We read that the leaders have done that after even the women have brought their part. And this is something that is, so to say, troublesome. Leaders should be at the leadership by an example. In Israel, they say that officers are disproportionately getting killed in army. Why? Because Israel is the only army that says, Acharai, follow me. In other countries, they say, Kadima, go ahead. The leader, the officer in charge says, go ahead. But, and I'm not here to downplay or politically incorrect to speak, but that's the way it is. In Israel, they say, follow me, Acharai. It's one word. And that's why they're first to receive the fire, and there are many more high officers killed in Israel than in any other army. So by Jewish people, the leader should be first, should serve as an example. Yet they were the last. The Rebbe is going to ask on Rashi almost 10 questions, and we'll see how the Rebbe follows. So we're going to start. I'm going to go very quick at the beginning, and I'm going to skip some parts. Rashi comments, page 573. Rashi comments on the verse, the princess is the leaders appointed for every tribe, brought the shoham stone and the other precious stones for mounting in the ephod and the breastplates. By citing the words the princess brought, Rashi uses the words the princess brought, the leaders brought. Rashi says, and paraphrasing Rabbi Nassan's explanation, he says, let me tell you what Rabbi Natan says. Rabbi Nassan said, what prompted the princess to donate for the dedication of the altar first, before the rest of the Jewish people, when by contrast they were not the first to donate for the work of the constructing of the sanctuary? Rabbi Nassan has a problem. Later on, when they dedicate the altar, once the construction is all completed, they're the first one to dedicate the altar. On the 1st of Nisan, in this week's portion, we read each tribe, God's put the order properly, but for the first 12 days of the month of Nisan, each day one other one was. So now they contributed, and they gave wagons, and they gave all kinds of utensils. but it was all with offerings of animals to sacrifice. Why suddenly they're first one in this week's portion? They were not the when by contrast they were not the first to donate for the work of constructing the sanctuary, says the Rabbi Nassan. This is what the princess said. Let the community donate what they will donate, and if they leave anything lacking, we will complete it. Since the community completed donating everything as it is written and the work was sufficient, the princess said, what are we to do? Therefore, they brought the shoham stones, etc. For this reason, they donated first for the dedication of the altar. Here is the way I understand it. At first, the leader said, let them have the mitzvah to donate, and whatever they're missing, we will complete. So in other words, they wanted to give a very large contribution, but they didn't want to take it away from the rest of the people. So they said, let them do first, whatever they're missing, we will complete. They realized that they made a mistake. What's a mistake? The Jewish people had given way too much. So therefore, they donated the precious stones, which were very, very expensive. Now it came about 3 months later. It came the time for dedicating the altar, meaning start using the temple. They says, now we're not going to wait to be last, we're going to be first. And that's why this time we read in this week's portion, at the end of Vayakel, that they actually dedicated the animals to dedicate the altar. Rabbi Nassan can continue. Therefore, they bought the shoham stone first. For this reason, they donated first in the dedication of the altar. Since initially they were lax, a letter is missing from the title, and Ve'anasiim, the princess, is written without a yud instead of Ve'anasiim with a yud. Rabbi Nassan concludes that's in Rashi. That's why the word Nesiim, princess, or leaders, is missing a yud there. If you read the two words over here that appears, one has two yuds and another one has one yud. The yud is missing to show that they are lacking in the fervor of giving by waiting to be last. According to a simple understanding, this is a simple understanding, and as interpreted by the commentators, Rashi is clarifying that since the Torah mentions the donation of the princess after all the other donations to the sanctuary, it is accepted as plain fact that the princess have made the donations last. However, Rashi says it cannot be said that the donations are mentioned last only because these items were mentioned last in God's command to Moshe at the beginning of the Parshas Truma, and in Moshe's command to the Jewish people at the beginning of Parshas Vayakel. We're going to skip that discussion. The Rebbe says that the reason Rashi is telling us that they were last to bring the stones, the precious stones, is simply because they are mentioned in the Torah as the ones that brought last. You read about the Jewish people bringing the beams, they bring in the tapestry, they bring in the wool, they bring in the crimson color dye, and then you read about the women, and then you read about the leaders. Why do you mention them last? Must be. The reason is because they actually brought last. It's what happened, that's why it's mentioned that way. We are skipping to page 577. However, this is difficult. However, this is difficult to comprehend according to a straightforward reading in the narrative. How is it that the princes of Israel waited before bringing the donations until after the entire congregation brought theirs? Commenting on this, Rashi explains that princes' reasoning, they said, let the community donate what they will donate, and if they leave anything lacking, that is, this transpired because they were lax. Right. Says Rashi, says the Rebbe, it doesn't make sense to call someone a leader if you tell me that he is going to lax and be lazy. And the way the simple translation is, the Jewish people say, God says, build me a temple to prove that I atone for the golden calf. And here is a list. He gave me a list of 13 items. Comes the leader, so what should the leader do? You should say, okay, let me do the most important part. Let me find the most expensive part. Let me lead by example. What do? They say, let everybody do whatever they want and we will make up for what is missing. It sounds they were very lax, they were very lazy, and it doesn't make sense. Why? Yes,
like
Steve.
religion.
Are we gonna
I
stick
like
to,
it.
we're gonna stick to the topic only, okay? Yes,
I
Steve.
like it. As a
What?
teacher, if you can make your students be independent and come up with things by themselves, and then you make sure it's done. He's like a teacher, the leader's like a teacher, making sure that everybody feels that they've contributed, they feel good, and he will make sure that it's all done properly.
So you like what? For them
I like the idea
to
of
wait?
letting the other people do it first, because it gives them a good feeling of responsibility. They got some skin in the game.
All right, so I have a problem with this, and let me explain. Many other problems. The Rebbe is going to ask 10 questions, so I don't want to take away the time. About 10, I think. I went up as far as 8. The first question is, the problem is that there was nothing left for them to do. So what's wrong with them doing first and serving as an example? As a teacher, you open the book, you teach them the language, and then you let them take it from there, right? In other words, there is always a leader must be informed. If you're behind, you're the tail, you're not the head. A leader is Rashi Bnei Israel. The leader must be at the head, meaning assuming responsibility and living by example. Anyone who does not lead by an example or assuming responsibility, I don't think it should be entitled to the title of leader. So, teacher, when you want them to feel that's their own creativity and you want them to feel that they have invested, of course, but all after the teacher serving by an example, showing them what he did, showing them what he knows, teaching them the language. Here, the leaders did nothing, zero, zilch. And they said, let them do whatever they want, and then we'll make up for it.
I see your point.
They could have by the way, they could have given those precious stones at first, and then they would have given it, serve an example, and allowed for everybody to do. But let's see what the Rebbe is asking so many questions to this story. Says the Rebbe, nevertheless, the lengthy elaboration in Rashi's commentary requires clarification. Among the questions that arise are, and I said, the Rebbe is asking a list of questions. You got to keep your head up high. And that's why you need people who have phenomenal brains, because what the Rebbe spoke, it's on Shabbos. Not only to remember all the questions, but to remember the order of the questions, and then to remember the answer. But let's see how many questions we can ask. Number A. Rashi asked, what prompted the princess to donate for the dedication of the altar? I'm going to give you an introduction. The story of the leaders bringing the precious stones appear in the book of Numbers, Bamidbar, in the portion of Nassau, the second portion. Not here, in the book of Exodus. Here, we're dealing about the dedication to the altar. In the dedication of the altar, what did they do? They were first, right? Meaning they learned from their mistakes. Says the Rebbe, the first question I was asking, okay, we have a problem, but the Yud is missing where? In this week's portion. But that's not where it should miss. It should miss in Nassau, where you read about the precious stones. Here we're not talking about this precious stone. We read about the animals for the altar, which they similarly corrected their mistake. That's the first. Rashi asks, what prompted the princess to donate for the dedication of the altar? Of what relevance, asked the Rebbe, here is the fact that the princess donated first for the dedication of the altar. The actual question here is, why, regarding the donations for the work of the constructing of the sanctuary that are described in the verse, didn't the princess donate first? Similarly, Rashi could have only quoted part of Rabbi Nassan's teaching in answer to the question, why did the princess not donate first to the construction of the sanctuary? First question the Rabbi is asking, you're dealing with a missing of a Yud, right?
Two Yuds,
Say,
actually.
no, there is one Yud there.
In here it shows two.
Two Yuds, but there is one Yud, missing only one Yud.
Take a look.
Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, you're right, two Yud. All right, 2 Yuds. You're right, Ali. For the first time. The last 10 minutes. In the last 10 minutes. Ali is right, 2 Yuds.
That means
I
you're a better
think
teacher because you taught.
I
him
think you
well,
can
he
have,
corrected
you can correctly, it's missing a Yud. Correctly, it can be done with 1 Yud, not with 2, okay? Let's go back. The problem we have is what the Yud is missing. So what is Rashi bothered to tell us about the altar that they offers? Who cares? Say, you know why it's missing a Yud? Because they lax in their contributions. They said everybody should bring. We will fill in what's missing. They realized everybody brought everything. It says the Torah was plenty. So therefore they brought last. And for that, a Yud is missing. That's enough.
Why is this so bad?
Huh?
Why is this so bad that they let everybody
Okay,
go?
so this is a question you asked already 3 times. Let's continue. We'll see how the Rebbe is explaining it. Number 2. When answering his question, why was it necessary for Rashi to elaborate on the rationale given by the princess? What did they say? Why are they late? Let the community donate, and then we will make up for what is missing. Ask the Rebbe. Similarly, Rashi should have stated concisely that the reason was because they were lax. We want to assume that they let them missing because they did something out of laziness. So why do I need the rationale of the behind? Anyway, it was wrong. In other words, it's addressing Ali's question. Rashi wants to point out that, based on the way we understand until now, Rashi wants to point out that the Yud is taken away from their name to denote misbehaving, inappropriate behavior. What was misappropriately? That they were lazy. Says the Rebbe, because that's the way it sounded very clearly. If so, what do I care about the reasoning? What the excuse anyway does not make any difference. All you want to know is they were lazy to be the last. And for that, God says you shouldn't be the last. You understand? Does that help you, Ali, a little bit? Okay, let's continue number 3.
Wasn't that they were just cheap?
No, because they end up bringing the precious stones, which was very, very expensive.
Okay.
They ended up paying.
They wanted to keep their.
Yeah.
Let's continue. Number 3. The essence of the narrative requires explanation. How is it possible to say that the entire reason Scripture singles out the donations of the princess, listing them after all the donations given for the sanctuary, including the women spinning the goat's hair, is only to let us know that the princess relaxed? That runs contrary to the general rules. Scripture does not speak negatively even about an impure animal. The Torah is very careful about not speaking inappropriately. Here, by putting that their donations came last, what you do is you single them out, you put them on the stake, and you say they are bad people, they are lazy people. Why does the Torah do that? What's wrong with putting them in the middle and saying by heart, and in the Talmud explain that they are last? The Torah singled them out, put them at the end, and you ask, why are they last? Leaders should be at first. Oh, you know why they're taking the back seat? Because they actually were lazy. It doesn't make sense. The Torah does not single out even a non-kosher animal. The Torah says an animal which is not kosher instead of saying an impure animal, the word tameh. The Torah adds 11 letters to stay away from defining someone as impure. Here, you single out publicly someone by mentioning that they're inappropriately behaved. So far, we have 3 questions. Did you understand that? No, you forgot
Good.
already. The first question is, who cares about the altar that they were first? All you care is that here they were last. The second question is, why do we need the reason why they were last? They say, let everybody do, and whatever they miss, I will fill in. Just say that they relax. they were last, and therefore they mention the letter is missing. The third question is the Torah is very careful from mentioning someone in a negative way, in a negative light. Here, simply you put the leaders in a very negative light. It doesn't make sense. Now the rabbi is going to ask many questions. We call them klotz kashes. Klotz kasha is that they are so obvious. Because they're so obvious, nobody pays attention to them. Here they are. There are other specific points in Rashi's commentary that require explanation. Among them, here is a few. The rabbi is listing about seven more, so it's a total of 10. Number one, seemingly Rashi's statements are self-contradictory. Why? From his statement, since the community completed, donated everything as it is written, and the work was sufficient, it is evident that the community brought everything that was necessary for the work of the sanctuary. How can that be reconciled with the fact that in practice, they were still lacking the shom stones and the other precious stones from mountain and the ephod and the breastplate, the spices and the oil that were used for the illuminating of the anointing oil and for the incense offering? Do you understand the question? How come nobody thought of that question? Only the Rebbe? The Rebbe is asking a simple question. I don't understand. Rashi says that they say everybody will do first, whatever they lack in, we will do. And then they realize everybody bought everything. Why? It says, "Ve'amelacha hayta dayam." It was sufficient for everything. So therefore, they bring in what? Shom stones, ephod stones, oil, incense. So something is missing here. So how do you reconcile those? That's one simple question. The Rebbe says it requires clarification because actually it's not Rashi. Rashi brings it from Rabbi Natan. Rabbi Natan is Medrash Tanchuma. So it's from the Medrash. But Rashi brings it, so when you read Rashi, you should ask this question. Number two, B, since the community completed donating everything, Rashi says they completed donating everything, and the Torah tells us that Moshe had to put a stop. Moshe said, he says, I'm going to put you in jail if you continue bringing. And they made their donations with extensive generosity, as the Torah states. The people are bringing very much, and the work was sufficient. There were donations left over, and the donation were left over. Why didn't they also bring those items that the princess said to supplement? In addition, first Rashi said, the Rebbe says a contradiction. Once you say, I had enough, and now you say something is missing. In addition, I don't understand. You say that the Melocha Oisodayom, that there was plenty. And Moshe, they went to Moshe and says, please make an order, a rule, a law, that they cannot bring anymore because they have nothing else to do with it. What do you mean they have nothing else? They didn't do everything. They should have announced, don't bring wood, don't bring gold, but bring oil and bring whatever is missing. What's going on here? Number C, conversely, why did the princess regret that there was nothing for them to do, and for that reason they donated first for the dedication of the altar? On the contrary, they bought several items that were of fundamental importance for the sanctuary and for the priestly garments. The Rebbe is asking, I don't understand. Later on, Rashi says that Rabbi Nassan said that by the dedication of the altar, they were first. They realized they made a mistake. What mistake did they make? At the end of the day, they supplied something that nobody else did. If so, they did bought their share. That was Ali's point.
But they're not first.
But they're not first. Okay, very good. D. What does Rashi add by saying, where are you going?
I'll be back.
What does Rashi say? What does Rashi add by saying, let the community donate what they will donate? Similarly, it would have been sufficient for Rashi to say, the princess said, if they leave anything lacking, we will complete it. The Rebbe says, Rashi says, the leader said, let them donate what they donated and we'll make up for what's missing. Just let's say simply, let them, they don't have to say, let them donate what they donate. Let them say, whatever is missing, we'll make up. You don't need to say, let them donate what they donated and we'll make up. E, what is underscored by the words, if they leave anything lacking? As the Rebbe, the implication is that by not bringing those items, there would be an inadequacy in what the Jews did, that there was something else they should have done. Similarly, the princess should have said what they will not bring, or the like. In particular, this is true because the term bringing is the language used by Scripture regarding the donations that were brought. The Rebbe is asking, the word in Hebrew, mechasrin means lacking or missing. Mevi'in or lo mevi'im, meaning didn't bring. So in the language of in the Hebrew language, it is much more accurate. The leader said, umashe mechasrin, what they are lacking, what they are missing, we will make up for. They should have said, umashe einam mevi'im, whatever they didn't bring. Let's continue. F. Why did the princess use the expression, what are we to do? It says in Rashi, the leader said, when they saw everybody is bringing, what are we to do? The words to do seems out of place. Similarly, they should have said, what are we to bring, or the like. Ma aleinu la'asot. Ma aleinu la'asot, nothing to do. It's not about doing, it's about donating. What are we going to donate? What are we going to bring? What's the action la'asot involved? G. Why does Rashi mention the name of the sage who authored this teaching, Rabbi Nassan? As previously noted many times, Rashi only cites the name of an author of teaching when doing so resolves a difficulty in interpretation of the verses in Rashi's commentary that would occur to an advanced student. The Rebbe says that if Rashi brings the name of the author, an advanced student will have a question that can be resolved by learning about the person who said that statement. And it's only the Rebbe's mind that can find it. The Rebbe says, why Rashi is bother bringing the name here? Usually Rashi will omit the names of the source of teaching. The fact that he's bringing a name, there must be a reason. Now the Rebbe says, let's go. So we had a bunch of questions. Now the Rebbe is going to go to the answers. The above can be resolved by first explaining the precision of the order and wording of Rabbi Nassan's question. Rabbi Nassan said the following: what prompted the princess to donate for the dedication of the altar first, before the rest of the Jewish people, when by contrast they were not the first to donate for the work of constructing the sanctuary? Rabbi Nassan's question is not, why didn't the princess donate first to the work of the construction of the sanctuary? It is the opposite. Why did they donate first to the dedication of the altar? This is also evident from the wording of Rabbi Nassan's answer. For this reason, they donated first at the dedication of the altar. What stood out as unique was the fact that they donated first for the dedication of the altar. This is very problematic. I'm going to give you a summary for that because otherwise you're going to get confused. Rabbi Nassan said, here is Rabbi Nassan's beginning. Why did they give first for the dedication of the altar? Says Rabbi Nassan, because when they came to the building of the construction of the temple, they said, let's see whatever else is missing. We will make up for it. They realized they bought everything and they were last. They said to themselves, we will be first now, dedication of the altar. In other words, the focus is not about being last. The focus is about why be first. Says the Rebbe, from Rabbi Nassan, we discover something new, that the ordinary leader should be actually last. The out of ordinary is why be first. And that's how Rabbi Nassan, I'm giving you the goes in and out with the Rebbe. The Rebbe proves it from many places. In other words, Rashi says, Rabbi Nassan's question is, why did they see at the altar dedication to be first? That's what bothered Rashi. The fact that they were last is the right way to do. Soon we're going to find out why they're missing Al Yud, but that's the foundation. That's the Akdama. That's the introduction. First, the question is not why they were last at the construction. That's the way a leader should be, to be the last. The question is, why were they first? And they said to themselves, last time we were last, we end up almost with nothing. Now we're not going to allow it. We're going to be first. Yes.
Is this with regard to donations, or is this with regard to anything, any leadership in any situation?
So-
everything that you-
Good question. When the Torah tells us this story, it is because it's dealing with the idea of leadership. In other words, this is what happened at the desert. But the reason the Torah bothers to record it is because it's something that me and you can learn when we need to be leaders. And I'm not talking about me, a rabbi. Everyone is a leader. You always have influence over people. And we need to assume that role and be leaders. And by the way, this is the year of Akel. The year of Hakel is when everyone can. I was there with the Rebbe in 1988, was speaking continuously that every gathering, it is for the purpose of dedicating ourselves to God. And there is a leader, there is somebody, the head of the family, the teacher, the rabbi, that does this Hakel, that say, let's dedicate ourselves to God, let's connect to God. And this is the idea of the leadership. Let's hope that we're going to get there.
So should it be first or last?
Should be last.
Okay.
The problem is at the dedication of the altar, they were first.
Wow.
Why are they first?
Why, but why should they be last? Did we answer that question? Why they should be
This
last and not
is
first?
very problematic. Why does the fact that they donated first for the dedication of the altar raise a question? Since they were the princes and the leaders of the Jewish people, similarly, that is what they should have done. They should have been first. Makes sense. B, conversely, if the order they followed in donating for the dedication of the altar was problematic, but the order they followed in donating for the sanctuary, meaning being last, is understood, then Rashi should have raised this question only in Parshat Naso and not also in Parshat Vayakel with regard to the donation for the work of the construction of the sanctuary. If the problem is by the altar when they dedicate it first is a problem, talk about it in Naso where they dedicate the altar. Here is a construction, there is no problem. In fact, these two questions answer each other. Rashi's intent in raising the question, what prompted the princess, was not to explain that the reason the princess brought their donations last was a result of lax attitude, but the opposite. They wanted to be leaders. Soon we'll find out that it was a mistake. But let's see what their idea was behind. That's why Rashi bothered to bring the reasoning. He sought to explain this verse, and by doing so, to clarify that the prince's conduct in bringing the donations last was proper. On the contrary, the real question is, why did they bring the donations for the dedication of the altar first? By quoting Rabbi Nassan's question, what prompted the princess, on this verse, Rashi was not questioning the prince's conduct in Parshat Naso, but rather explaining and clarifying the verse here. The Rebbe says, let's find out what Rashi bringing it here. He is trying to help us understand the rationale to justify it and not to single them out as behaving in lax, in laziness. And here is, why was it necessary for the princess to bring their donations for the sanctuary last? Rashi answers in a straightforward manner. This is what the princess said. Let the community donate what they will donate, and if they leave anything lacking, we will complete it. With that explanation, he clarifies that the responsibility of a leader, the role of a Jewish leader is first and foremost to ensure that the Jews do what is asked of them. Only afterwards should he think about himself and his own individual concerns, even his holy concerns. And Rashi is bringing a proof for Moshe. The Rebbe is bringing proof for Moshe. We're going to skip it. The Rebbe says that the role of a leader is to put the community before himself. God had made a commandment, bring a contribution. Everyone needs to feel the obligation to give. But a leader's role is to think about the members of the community. How can we make them do what's right? And therefore, they put the community before their own personal need or benefit. Because bringing to the temple, becoming a partner in the construction is a great honor. It's a great, great honor that no other nation was bestowed upon. And therefore, the leader said, let us look after the community before we look after our own personal need. The Rebbe says that's the way Moshe was. Moshe, when he came down from Mount Sinai, he wouldn't even go to his tent to say hello to his wife and enjoy a nice dinner. He was always busy connecting the Jewish people to God, even at the cost of his own personal gain. And the reason is because that's the role of a leader. Let's continue. So this is the start. Similar concept to our page 582, second paragraph. Similar concepts apply regarding the matter at hand. The first responsibility of the princess was to ensure that the community donate. That is, that the Jews donate as much as they could. Therefore, they said, if they leave anything lacking, we will complete it, and not what they will not bring. Or the like, a prince of the Jewish people, as prince of the Jewish people, the responsibility was to demand that the Jews donate everything they possibly could that was necessary for the sanctuary. That's why, says the Rebbe, they said mechasrin, whatever they're lacking. In other words, their goal is to convince the people to lack nothing, to bring everything. And by doing so, they did it in a way that they allowed the Jewish people an option. When a Jew comes and says, what can I do? The leader would say to him, there is a list of 13 items. And he says, oh, I want to give gold. I want to give wood. I want to give tapestry. I want to give precious stones. If the leaders would have taken first something, they would have eliminated that option from some of the people, and they didn't want to do it. Therefore, what was germane was not that what they will not bring, implying that the Jews might fail to bring these items. If the people could bring what was needed, the princess would ensure that they actually bought them. Instead, what concerned the princess was if there would be anything lacking. That is, if there would be an items that the Jews had caused themselves to lack. True, as Rashi previously stated, because of what they took from the spoils of Egypt and the spoils they took after the splitting of the Red Sea, of the Sea of Reeds, the Jews certainly had possessed all the materials needed for the sanctuary, and they had the desire of generosity of heart to bring them for the sanctuary. However, perhaps the Jews would be unable to donate them because they had already previously used these items for purposes associated with the mitzvah, and particularly a mitzvah associated with the specific and passing time frame. Therefore, if they would be lacking these items, the princess would complete that lack. The above clarifies Rashi. I'll explain it in a moment. I'll summarize it. The above clarifies Rashi's wording. Since the community completed donating everything, the princess said, what are we to do? And not what are we to bring? This refers not only to the donations for the sanctuary, but primarily to the princess's role as leaders. Since the community completed donating everything, that is, the Jews brought everything they could possibly bring, the princess said, what are we to do? That is, what further responsibility do we have as leaders, since they have already carried out their mission regarding the task? Only then did they begin thinking about their personal participation in the donations for the sanctuary. As a result, they bought the Shem stones. Before we address any question, let me summarize. Says the Rebbe, what's the role of a leader? A role of a leader is to inspire the community to do the right thing. They felt that their role, before they think about their personal gain by connecting to God, is to inspire the community to give. What happened was they realized that was unnecessary, because the community has brought everything they had in their possession to the sanctuary. Therefore, they say, Ma anu la'asot. What else we have left to do? They don't need leaders. They themselves are leaders. You know, they're all chiefs, no Indians. They know what's right. They do what's right. Ma aleinu la'asot. Not ma aleinu lehavi. What are we to bring? It's not about bringing because everything was there. What are we to do? They said. What role do we have as leaders? And seemingly the people are mature enough to know what to do. And therefore we have no right to exist, so to say. We have no role to carry. That was the question. And therefore they said, since we have no more role, let's look at what can we do personally to connect to God. Just a minute. And therefore they saw that there were a few things missing. Yes.
The question goes begging, if all the tribes were everything that was needed, there should have been nothing lacking, maybe the show of stones.
That's the next question the rabbi is going to address.
No,
We're
it's-
starting, okay?
So, Rabbi,
So we started, just a minute, we started with the foundation. The foundation is that a leader takes into the need of the community before the personal need. And therefore being last to bring for a leader is not a defect, it's not an inappropriate behavior, but actually the right way because they put the community first. Second, they felt that their role is to inspire people to give, therefore they should be last because they want to offer everybody a bigger spectrum of giving. The problem was they realized that their role was unnecessary because the people, as the Torah tells us, brought more than necessary. And therefore they say, what are we to do? What is our role? We have no role in the participation of the temple. And therefore they checked and they found that few things were missing. We have still many questions. If it's so, what was wrong with their behavior? We see that the Yud is missing. Number two, as Harry is pointing out correctly, if everybody bought everything, as the Rebbe is asked, how come something is missing? It's a self-contradictory, right? That's your question. These are the two questions. And now we understand Ali's point. It wasn't out of laziness. Otherwise, the Torah would not mention that in a negative light. It was because they felt as leaders, they have a role to inspire people and to put their own personal connection to God last. However, they realized that their role was unnecessary, was superfluous, it was no useful. Let's
No,
continue.
sorry,
Yes.
just to clarify, so all these conversations, what the people will not bring, we should bring, and what are we to do? Conversations amongst themselves?
The
or
leaders.
Conversations with Hashem?
The leaders among themselves.
Amongst themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
But it gives us a mindset of understanding what leadership, what role a leader should take. This to me is a very, can we continue? Because it's very rich. It's very rich. I don't want to miss anything. We started late, so we're going to continue a few more minutes, please. Harry, you forgive me?
Then we give.
I have a doctor, I have to get to that.
Although
I have to go, I'm sorry.
on the surface, this was an appropriate course of behavior for leaders. In actual fact, something was lacking. They themselves had not donated to the sanctuary with the appropriate eagerness. The princes thus realized that their delay in bringing their own donations to the sanctuary until the end was not entirely desirable and fitting. On the contrary, there was a certain laxity involved. Therefore, to correct this, they donated first to the dedication of the altar. In a moment, the Rebbe will address it. So the first point says, Rebbe, with all this that was said, there was something missing, and that is the swift quickness, zrizut. Avraham Avinu, when God told him, go slaughter your son, what do we read in the Torah? Vayashkem Avraham baboiker, early in the morning. Yeah, maybe you got it happen with a minyan, you gotta say Shema, and there is a breakfast by kibbutzers, and after that you drive the rabbi nuts a little bit for a couple of minutes, and then you go and check your bank account. I mean, God says go and do it. He didn't tell me early in the morning, but if someone wants to serve God in the best way possible, does not miss the opportunity by doing it as early as possible. Zrizut, according to the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, he says that's the uniqueness of Abraham, and for that we are still reaping the benefits. Every morning we pray to God. Zrizut say the Abraham Avinu. In other words, the leaders, as leaders, they had a role to play, and that is to show how quick they are to spend money to serve God. And that was missing. Even though they took into account their role as inspirers and convincing others to do, they should have placed their role model as the ones who act quickly, especially when there's an expense. And for that, they were lacking. That's why Rabbi Nassim said, why were they first by the dedication of the altar? Because they wanted to correct their lacks of not doing quick. So that's one question answer. What was lacking them in their attitude to the donations of the sanctuary? Rashi answers this by saying the community completed donating everything as it was written, and the work was sufficient. Since the community donated everything necessary for the construction of the sanctuary, the donations of the princes was not entirely necessary, as will be explained below. Since the princes saw that the community completed donating everything, and thus the donation would not be needed, they would not share equally with all the Jews in giving what was fundamentally necessary for the donations of the sanctuary. This brought them to the realization that their conduct in not making the donations first was not desirable. There was a certain laxity involved, as stated above. And here is the rabbi's explanation to explain the above. I hope you can bear with me 3-4 more minutes. To explain the above, when the Jews donated the gold, silver, and the like from which the items for the sanctuary and the priestly garments were to be fashioned, they saw that they did not have all the 13 materials necessary for the construction of the sanctuary. They were lacking the shoam stones and the other precious stones for mounting. Therefore, they made extra donations of silver and gold, giving sufficient funds to purchase whatever was lacking. This can be understood from the wording as Rashi's commentary. The community completed donating everything. The work was sufficient. The implication of that quote is that the Jews compensated even for those of the 13 materials which were lacking by donating a large amount of silver, gold, etc., enough to pay the full price of the shoam stones and the other precious stones for the mounting, etc. Therefore, the princes felt that they did not have an equal participatory role as all the Jews in the donations of the sanctuary. The Jews had already given everything needed for the sanctuary. As a result, the donations of the princes were not necessary, since financial resources were available for which to purchase the shoam stones. Their participation is only that, in actual fact, they bought the shoam stones, and by doing so, they made purchasing them unnecessary. What the Rebbe is saying is there is no contradiction. When the Jewish people are called into the plate, they all brought in all the 13 parts. There were some parts, like the stones, precious stones, or the oil for the menorah. The actual material was not there. However, they did have the financials for that. They had plenty of gold and silver to purchase. But now the leaders see that everything is done. They have enough money to pay. They said, no, we need to participate too. We will bring the actual stones, the actual oil. And therefore, there was something missing. And therefore, it's not a contradiction to say that everything was done. We're going to stop here because it's getting late. But to me, what I learned from here, and I've heard, I believe I heard the Rebbe speak that talk. Let me see because it keeps going. No, I did not hear that talk, but I have studied it many times. The role of a leader versus his own personal growth is at stake here. Leaders sometimes need to understand that their personal growth, it should be secondary, and the community's need comes first. However, this is only when it comes to a equal balance. However, when the leader has a role to serve by showing an example about how quick to act in that place, they have to act on their own so that the rest of the community is inspired to do it in the right way, because there's no other way. When I tell someone you have to do it very quick, or it's the right thing to do, even though it's expensive, they will not listen to the words, but they will see the action. If they see that I act quick and they see that I spend the money, now they take the role. And that's the essence of what the Rebbe wants from us.
So,
Thank you very much, everybody.